It's presenting to you the Solutions Clinic. In the Solutions Clinic, we are going to delve deeper into how AI, we've been talking about artificial intelligence, right? So we're going to talk about AI, how AI can be used ethically and effectively to advance what we're all talking about, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Tying AI to DEI is the topic, and to talk about it, we have with us Apurva Agarwal, Principal ZS. Apurva is an industry leader with over 20 years of experience in providing strategic consulting services to clients in the global healthcare and life science industries, leading multidisciplinary teams and successfully delivering large-scale strategy and transformation programs. Over the last 10 years with ZS, Apurva has been instrumental in driving business growth, building the overall strategic direction, enabling deep global client relationships, and fostering an environment of collaborative growth. As a member of ZS Global Women at ZS ERG and People and Culture team, Apurva has played an integral part in scripting ZS's goal of achieving 50% women and gender expansive ZSers in hiring. I think that deserves a huge round of applause. Come on, you're all energized. I hope you all had dessert. That's going to give you loads of energy to give a very big round of applause to this. Thank you so much, Apurva, for joining in with us today. She has also played a key role in setting up the ERG in India, generating awareness, proactively creating opportunities for women, and personally mentoring and coaching many women to grow at ZS. We heard Tarun speak about mentoring and coaching, and he said it's more coaching than mentoring, right? So thank you so much, Apurva. Over to you. I hand over the stage as you provide us with solutions on tying AI to DEI. I would also like to announce that we will have time for question and answer. Maybe, Apurva, you think we'll be able to do that?
So,
yeah. So after the presentation, be ready with your questions that you wish to ask Apurva. Over to you.
Thank you. And no pressure, because she said this is the most exciting session, but it's post-lunch. So I'd really like you to keep your eyes open and ears as well. All right. Working. Can you move the slide ahead, please? Okay. All right. So when we were talking about DEI, AI, and I think it's almost like 3 acronyms together. Okay. I have spent a lot of time and mind share advancing DEI because it's a big passion of mine. Been in the industry for 20 years. I understand the challenges, and I don't think to this group I need to tell what are the challenges. We talked a lot about it, and hence we understand why it's needed. Now let's look at AI. AI, on the other hand, is a game changer, right? There are enough and more evidence that has been talked about how it will create impact in enterprise solutions in the coming times to create innovative solutions and capabilities. And for me, is the role that I will play in tying this together, as well as I will become and make sure I bring that change together. So that's the session about today. But let's look at it individually a little. Of course, we've talked a lot about it today since morning, that we've made a lot of progress in DEI. I'll share a few facts. Let's look together as to what they are. Can you guys tell me what these numbers are? There is a little hint there. When we are talking about access to higher education, what do you think is a 48% and a 43%? Diversity. 48% is the number of women in India, percentage of women in India are going through a graduation plus. This number was 32% in about 8 years ago. Let's look at 43. It is related to education. STEM education. Somebody, thank you. I don't have chocolates, but this number is about 38% 8 years ago. So there is progress happening, but at a pace that we can move ahead with. Let's look at the next one. Workforce. These are easy numbers. So tell me what these are. 37% is the total workforce of women in India, percentage. That is, working women is 37%. Absolutely. 16. CXOs. Okay. And this number was about 24% about 8 years ago, and 8% only about 5 years ago as well. Okay. Now here, as you see, we have made significant or incremental progress depending on which lens you want to see it from. Let's look at a third one. Healthcare for women. Okay. It's very interesting to see that most of the women sitting around here, as well as in the world, are more likely to have a heart attack, and they're also less likely to get a treatment of cardiovascular. Because of the availability of data that's available for women in healthcare, the trials that they go through, as well as the misdiagnosis that we have. So there is some representation that is starting, and of course, companies are talking about, but it's not there, right? There is disparities across gender. And of course, if you're looking at diagnosing us or women of ethnicity for cancer, you cannot do it with a white man data to know what will impact us. Okay? And then also because of fewer women who actually enter the clinical trial stage. In fact, there is a research that I was reading which says if there is a women leader who is actually leading the trial, there are 48% of women and their trial pool is more diverse as compared to 35% when a man leader is looking at leading a clinical trial. But imagine if the data doesn't have, the clinical trial data doesn't have women in that, how would you have drugs discovered and diagnosed and then treated as well? Okay. Let's look at the fourth one. I'm sure many of you would have seen this. You remember the first few iPhones and Samsung Galaxy, and they actually did have a public message and narrative around this, said that, their phones are really heavy. They would not fit into our hands because I don't think they tested as much or designed it for the hand of the gender, right? And then there was a narrative with saying, you know what, if you make it smaller, there'll be lesser features which you would not like. But that's not how you look at a design or a development of a new product. You have to look at another 48, 49% of the population of the world, right? There is a very interesting one, and I want to read this a little. Apple, of course, came up with the health app, right? They keep coming up with these tracking mechanisms of tracking sleep and sleep patterns, etc. They've also recently come up with copper tracking amongst humans. But one thing they've still not done is menstruation tracking, and it's interesting, and I want to read the name. There is an author which wrote Invisible Women Say, and she made a joke. Her name is Kryda Perez, and she made a joke saying it seems like they didn't have enough women who were going through periods in their design or development stage. But that is true. It is a very basic requirement for most women and would really help all of us if we have an app like that. So the idea that I was trying to show here was, of course, we are making progress, but we are at different stages of that progress, and there is so much more we can do. Let's go to the next one, AI. It is rapidly, rapidly changing the world. There is unprecedented pace at which this growth is happening. Everybody uses Netflix here. How much time do you think Netflix took to get to 1 million users? I'll guess. How many years? 3.5 years. Let's go to Facebook. How much time do you think they took to get to 1 million users? 10 months. Spotify. 5 months. Okay, we are shrinking the time. Now guess how much time did it take to get to ChatGPT 1 million users? 5 days. Thank you. 5 days. And today they're at 1.5 billion users. Right? So this unprecedented pace is already picking up. It's right here. It's in front of us. Let's look at the next one. It is revolutionizing the industries, across all industries, and many examples, right? In the finance industry, a lot of fraud detection is happening through it. Trading decisions are being made through it. Creative industry, they're generating art, composing music, right? Healthcare, I already talked about. The drug development process is being shrunk. Clinical trials are being optimized using AI. And, of course, retail, personalized shopping, inventory management. And Gartner has given the study that 80%, more than 80% of enterprise solutions will have technology and AI-enabled solutions by 2026, which is currently, in 2023, only 5%. So it is here, it is revolutionizing. Let's look at this one. And this is a very, very interesting example of how AI is not imitating, but creating innovation. Okay? There is a Korean game called Go. Has anybody heard of it? Yeah? It's a board game, and the objective of the game is to gather more territory. Millions have played it since 1950. And then Google's DeepMind created an AI, and that bot defeated the world champion Lee Sedol. Okay? There's a huge hue and cry about how AI is going to surpass human intelligence, and this is not a fair play, etc. And when the data of what is called AlphaGo, of AlphaGo was released, They realize the number of decisions, the computation power, as well as the quick implementation of those decisions AlphaGo was able to do. And then humans have been using that data to make the same game for them more powerful. So now humans are back in that game with that data to see how can I use something that I learned as new knowledge. And that is our example of how AI is a game changer with respect to many things that's happening across the industry. Now the question is, will it transform DEI, right? Is it happening? Is it already started? Of course it is started. We're all doing this as well. But think about the cycle of how do humans approach decisions in DEI is we perceive, which is we look at facts and data. We then think to say, why is that happening? And then we act around it. How can we mimic an AI model to do similar? The data is at performance data or resumes or anything that we are talking about. Then how do we look at the drivers of those performance or opportunities that have been given? And then how do we act to make sure that the AI or the models or the algos that we are creating is actually helping us do this faster, better, effective, efficient as well. Okay. Now, a few things to keep in mind though, is there are some risks involved, and these are not risks that all of us have been aware of for a very long time, right? Cognitive bias. Cognitive bias is basically subconscious systematic disruption or deviation that comes from the ordinary from the AI developers and engineers that we have in place, okay? And as you can see from the data, there are only 22% professionals, women, in the AI and data science world, which means when we are creating these algorithms, when we are designing the models, there is already a cognitive bias of the developer who's sitting out there, right? So that's something that we have to always be a little cautious of because the developer might not be thinking around DI at all because of the nurturing and the years of conditioning that we've seen, right? The second one is about training bias. The access to data, the access to technology, internet, smartphones is 15% lesser, and 300 million fewer women are using it as compared to men, which means the social data that's available about us itself is so less that the training data that we use to create our algos itself would also be biased. So that itself makes it a bias that we are inherently perpetuating because of the data itself not having it, or training the algorithm on a biased data that we have. And the last, of course, is the bias of outcome that happens because of the above two, because it's inherently built in the design and the testing of these systems. There was an example, in fact, Amazon very early, and some of us have had, ZS has also had its own experience in this one, but there was a publicly available information of Amazon's recruitment strategy that they changed. They had created an AI-enabled system where they were rating resumes using AI, right? And they had scrapped it because the tool was using not so general neutral words to look at screening those resumes. For example, conquest was a word. I'm not sure how many of us use it in our daily language as much, especially women, okay? Women in chess club was seen as a bad thing because chess club was supposed to be originally for men. So that's the kind of things that they realize in their data, in their tool, that help us take away and scrap it. And of course, we've all adapted our own recruitment AI engines now that we are using them in the system as well. Let's look at another fun thing that my team did. We asked ChatGPT, what do CEOs wear? Can you guess the answer? Suits, brogues, blazers, polished shoes, loafers. What about the saris, the jewelry, the sandals? I loved Deepti's purple colored matching bellies, right? So it's not there. Now one can argue that ChatGPT is using data of the real life that's available, right? That is true. And that's exactly the training bias that we're talking about, and hence being conscious of what we bring in when we are creating these systems to mitigate some of these perpetuating bias ways. Okay. Another one, another risk and something to keep in mind is just like any new technology creates a gap for some time for underprivileged societies, countries, right? It is also creating a little, for now, creating some gender disparity in terms of accessibility and usage of technology availability or AI-enabled tools, right? A couple of them, of course, I've talked about. Internet access itself is very different. The STEM workforce is very different. And look at the access of top 50 AI tools. My data tells me 54% of men are using AI in their professional, personal lives as compared to 23% women, right? So it is widening the gap. Somebody can also play, and there's another debate that I've heard that it says that, nobody knows AI. We've always kept the belief that women don't know technology and we are always lagging behind. Nobody knows AI. We can get ahead because we are learning as much as the other gender as well, right? But the data is speaking for itself. The other one that I want to say, it's actually perpetuating in small women entrepreneurial activities, right? There was a bamboo making entrepreneurial professional we were reading about, and how women were not comfortable using internet for their business because they weren't sure where the data is coming from, where the money is coming from. They were not literate enough to know online transactions and not comfortable sending out their goods as well. So it is leaving behind a few people that we think it is. All right. Having said that, of course, how do we make sure that we don't lose out into the good and the power of AI, and then make sure we're implementing it well and making it more responsible to move ahead with the DI objectives that we have? There is a framework that ZS has created. We use it for our own business, and there's an absolute analogy that we can apply in any DI objective that we are trying to serve. But the framework is basically telling me, how do we create trust through dimensions of responsibility? Responsibility comes in from, am I doing the right thing, which comes into the values. So how do we build the values in our models? Competency, is it credible, is it reliable, is it doing what I'm asking you to do by not creating biases? And of course, transparency in the decision making that we are doing, right? And for each of these three dimensions, we have sub-dimensions which gives us opportunity to create tools and checklists that we can then apply to any design, testing algorithm that we are doing. Equitability is one of them. We talked a lot about it in the panel as well. At what stage and where do we include equity in our model also is something we have to take a conscious decision on and ask the right question and create something called a trustworthiness score that has helped evaluate the AI algorithm LLM as well. The other one that I do want to talk about is, of course, once we have built the trust, we have to also understand what are the mitigation steps that we do, and then they happen in the entire value chain of developing a model, right? As early as where are we gathering the inputs from? How gender diverse, demographic diverse, ethnicity diverse our gathering of the information and the data is? Who is designing and developing? Do we have enough different diverse stakeholders that we are talking about? Are they looking at the lens? Are we embedding DEI in AI for AI to be successful to impact the AI? So a little bit of that circle we'll have to go through in the beginning, right? Then, of course, testing. Again, are we looking at it from the lens of DEI as well? And diverse aspects of what are the things that we need to keep in mind when I test my app? And then the last is, of course, make sure compliance, boundaries, guardrails, feedback and all is taken. I don't want to spend a lot of time there. I'm happy I'm around to talk about it more. But that's the framework that we apply when we are looking at building trust in an AI system and the steps that we actually take in the value chain to make sure this is happening. One example, as an analogy I'm using to share what we've done. ZS is 90% of our work is with the healthcare industry. So the example that I'm going to take is yet again a healthcare one. But I was thinking about how to apply it to a DI objective. And I'd love some inputs as well, post this. The example is for rare disease patients. Rare disease, for most of us who would know, are one in less than 250,000 patients, right? Like one in less than 200,000 patients is something, the definition of a rare disease. The biggest issue that rare disease has in the healthcare industry is that we don't identify patients on time. There is a lot of delay in identifying the patients. So what our AI approach did was, we created two sets of pools of patients. Okay? One set of pool was a confirmed LGS is Lennox-Gastaut syndrome and DS. So the orange is a pool of patient which is confirmed, And then, of course, we have the unlabeled patients, which is the potential patients which is showing. Now, a potential patient which goes to a doctor who doesn't know about the rare disease is always treating you for comorbidity, and that doesn't help identifying the patient itself. So that's the reason we were trying to do this. And what it does is it trains the model on pool A, and then we are testing it through multiple stepwise strategy on pool X, and then we validate it with a part of the pool which is confirmed patient to see if my algorithm is actually giving the right result, and that is called SPIES. They're actually confirmed patients, but we just put them in the system to make sure that our model has worked well to be able to. Now I was thinking, and sorry for digressing, but I was thinking that how would this be applied to identifying leadership potential in women in the organizations? A lot of HR professionals sitting here. What are the qualities that we see in the women looking at that patient, that pool? And of course, there could be qualities that we can see from both genders, but more leadership qualities, and applying it to a middle management group and say, can we identify them earlier and create customized development plan? So there could be applications of this. This is just one example. There were so many such applications that we can bring in that can help advance our DI objectives with a much more data-backed, responsible AI that we build, mitigating some of the biases that we've seen in the past. All right, let's make it a little bit more specific. Many are already doing this, but some examples is it helps wider the talent pool. Many HR professionals would know the budget, the travel, the number of people or schools we can reach out to when we are hiring is always limited, right? And it is always dependent a little bit of you're going to tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, right? Having an AI-based resume screening, of course, mitigating the bias that I was talking about, can actually widen the pool with which we can go and reach out to institutions we've never even heard about, right? It also takes away the bias of, if I did not crack a 3-hour exam and I'm in a tier 3 institute, but my skills and capabilities are really good, it gives a little bit of a level playing field for that individual as well. Okay? I'm not taking away people who are in tier 1, but it can give opportunities and be more inclusive to the others, right? Similarly, it can eliminate some bias in recruitment when we are looking at more facial expressions, visual tones, etc., which might be missed out in a regular interview that we're doing with a human. These are all enablers that we'll have to apply to look at how we can use this to advance diversity hiring and recruitment in our firms. This is an interesting one. I do want to show this. Many of you would have seen the first one. Okay, it is a picture that Mr. Anand Mahindra posted when he was actually babysitting for his daughter, and made him realize how much more women do. I think Deepthi or somebody I'm forgetting the name, but somebody had talked about the mental workload, right? The mental workload of menu making for tomorrow. Is the fridge open? What is there in the fridge? What are we making for a child's tiffin? All of that is mental workload that is unpaid for and is unaccounted for. I'm actually saying, let the work field be equity and will be the same, but the home field be equity. Can I get robots to do this for me? Can I get a Gen AI to scan my fridge and say, this is available, this is your child's one month's homework pattern, etc., and then take away that load for me so that it's a level playing field for me when I'm on the race with everybody else, right? It's an idea. I don't know how much it can be done, I'm sure. The other one, of course, is when we are creating AI and Gen AI, there are two broad skills that are required: problem solving and technical coding skills. Now, we've always said women are not good at coding, and I'm generalizing it. There is data also, though, to talk about it, but we are very good at problem solving. So if AI can do the technical coding skills, we can have a level playing field for problem solving, which we can bring in, enabled by a bot. So these are the kind of ways that we can bring equity in our workforce going ahead. And then the last, of course, is inclusion, which is how do we increase the accessibility of technology? Especially it will help with people with disabilities. So we have talked a lot about gender, but I think this can help in much broader inclusion of skills that we can have in. And performance development, identifying patterns and negative patterns that are happening for people who are not getting promoted, and coming up with a faster, effective way to identify that and mitigate it if it's within our system. Okay. I don't know what time did we start, so that's all I had. I think one thing that I do want to end with is, of course, Gen AI and AI is here to stay. right? The power of computing, the force to beckon is absolutely here, right? And all of us, HR professional, business leaders, people in the industry, it's getting more complex, and there's a lot more of us to be asked in terms of the complexity, the challenges and the risk. But it's also upon I, which is all of us, to see where in that journey can I come in, where in that journey can I contribute to my, to learn about AI first, to then contribute to the designing, development, and testing of these so that we can create some tools that can help advance our DI objectives. All right, so with that, I think I end my presentation. Thank you. Any questions? There's one there. Thank you. I can.
People don't like to speak to bots. Have you tested them at the interview stages also?
We have. We've rolled out, we've taken it back, and we've adapted, and then rolled it out again. Okay? So I think the idea is it might not be the last fit interview that we were talking about, which is a cultural fit, but the entire process that happens, which is based on competency model, how do you rate and rank resumes, screening resumes, rank and rate individuals who come out of it. All of that, I think it speeds up and accelerates the pace at which and the scale of the number of people you can reach out to. So yes, it is tried and tested, but we've adapted a few times. It is not a, oh, I've done it once and it has to be, it ends. Our recruitment lead is here, Ashish, and we've done this many a times to be able to say that we've been able to create some numbers. I'm sure Ashish can share some as well. So anything else you want to add? Please.
Yeah, thanks, Apurva. So I think specific to that question, there are still firms who are testing it, and we as a firm we are trying to partner with them. Like Apurva mentioned that we have done it, we took it back, and we are trying to do it again. Only for the reason that it didn't work first time. It doesn't mean that we will not do it again. We will keep trying, and that's what we are trying to do. We are working with that firm on the beta stage of the product so that we are able to make changes wherever it is required. And maybe, in a couple of months or, 3-4 months down the line, there will be a time that you all would be seeing this, in the industry that at least the first level of screening is something which can be done by a bot and can mitigate all the biases, and of course has to be clubbed with a human interview where you can actually find the behavioral and the cultural aspects of your firm.
Somebody at the panel had said, never be perfect. It's not sequential. It's an iterative process. We learn, and it's just so new that it will take time for all of us to adapt to this, to understand why we are doing it, and then what is the impact that we can have through it. Please. How much time do we have? Yeah, please.
Yes. So my question is, using AI in human resources, do you think that we are let going human angle from this function?
It is. Yeah, it's such a philosophical question. And I'd love my HR teams and community to please answer with me because I'm not one. I actually feel it'll never ever take away anything from humans because it's the humans who will have to continue to add on to the touch, the sensitivity, the empathy, the elements that are needed to make sure we take the final right decision. Okay, so maybe the way to look at it is the think, perceive, act decision. Let's add that, and probably it will help speeden up and accelerate and make the process effective till then. And maybe then that's where we come in. But I'd love to have other opinion as well here. Thank you. All right, please.
biodiversity or the physical diversities, right? I'm not sure whether models are there in place that they can identify, or it's more like to look at and rule out the biases of gender only.
Yeah, I find myself not prepared enough to answer that, but I'm sure they are. Maybe there are different stages of development. For gender, there is just definitely, with the 40-50% of population being there, it's advanced a little bit more, and we want to advance it at a faster pace so that the incremental movement of DEI and the transformative change that AI, Gen AI can bring in can map. But I'm sure they are. I'm happy to research more and help answer. All right. Thank you.
I don't need the mic actually, I just realized. Anyway, thank you so much, Apurva. May I request Siddharth Srinivasan, VP Marketing at Avatar, to present a memento to Apurva? Thank you, Siddharth. May we have the memento, please? Thank you. Thank you, Siddharth. Thanks, Apurva.
Thank you, gesture. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.